It was a really powerful session, a wonderful dialogue with tribal leaders. Vice Chairman Wadahomaji started the discussion, and first basic question was, what is the biggest educational need in your community? And for the Wallapai, retaining teachers is a big issue. There's a shortage of housing. Teachers often have to commute from Kingman, which is quite a distance. But then he also talked about, the factor of culture shock for non-native teachers that come into a native community. And he was advocating for a cultural sensitivity type course or training for all incoming teachers. And this came up more than once in our discussion. So that's something we want to give some more thought to. We have the Dean of the College of Ed here. I wonder if this came up in your session. If not, maybe we can follow up on this and see what we can do to help. Chairman Thomas Beauty, the Yavapai Apache Nation, they are actually offering a Yavapai Apache 101 course. This is targeted at middle school teachers. And I think it's the Camp Verde School District. Do I have that right? Chairman's not here. Okay, I think I have that right. So, what they did is they brought in cultural directors, one from Yavapai, one from Apache, to put the pressure on. They had a lot of resistance at first from the school district. I think that's significant. And they kept on it, kept the pressure on, and eventually, won the day, kept making the case for the importance of this, and the school district came around. It's now mandatory cultural training for teachers. So moving on to Chairman Roland Maldonado, Kaiba Paiute. He talked about the ongoing issue and challenge of historical trauma and the boarding school experience, which leads to what we often talk about in terms of intergenerational trauma. It doesn't end with those that attended boarding schools, but is often passed down. He said that we need an education system that adequately addresses this history. One that is, what he said is we should not be shy about referring to that history by the term genocide. He also pointed out that an institution like NAU is formulating tomorrow's tribal leaders, and that we have a particular responsibility to do what we do correctly. And excuse me while I read through some of these notes, I'm doing some on-the-fly editing here. So one thing I wanted to echo too, that Chairman Maldonado touched on, this is tied to our traditional knowledge scholar program here at Northern Arizona University. So in the Department of Applied Indigenous Studies, we have elders that are with us to share their traditional knowledge with students. They take care of both counseling, guiding students, providing that support, but also they work in the classroom. So both our elders fairly recently have gotten into the classroom and are teaching. One of our elders, Lorenzo Max, who is Navajo, is teaching a course with Dr. Manley Begay titled Navajo Philosophy. So that part of the equation is very important. And Chairman Maldonado asked, well, what do you pay these folks? And that's, I gotta say, I'm embarrassed to even have to share that information. Our elders are with us 19 hours a week. and they're not paid as much as they ought to be for what they're sharing. We talked about how someone with that level of traditional knowledge ought to be viewed at the same level as any PhD, and even higher. Yeah, I think what we talked about today, our elder Lorenzo Max, he's got 2 PhDs, at least the equivalent. So this is it's a big task because it requires kind of dealing with the structures of an academic institution like this and making the case to upper administration for the importance of traditional knowledge scholars, as we call them, our elders, the value of what they bring. It falls outside of kind of the typical academic categories. And so we are working on this. I mentioned that we have a proposal in to double their hours, and we're making progress. And I want to again thank the Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, Karen Pugliese, for her dedication to making progress in this area. And one other thing that Chairman Maldonado pointed out is, if we're not taking care of our elders, those that have this traditional knowledge in the right way, we actually run the risk of perpetuating historical inequities. And that's something that a lot of food for thought for me. So I really thank you for that, Chairman. Okay, so Verlin Jose, Vice Chairman, Tejada Autumn. Great statement. He said, the smarter we get, the dumber we get. Now, PhDs can relate to this. You go through that process and you start to forget how to tie your shoes. This is a really important statement, because basically the point he was making is that, the more we're educated in kind of a standard way, the more out of touch we can become with basic teachings that have been handed down through generations in our native communities. And so he talked about the need to change how society views education, to see about changing, and this is really tied to the elder issue I spoke of, changing how the institution views education and expanding that view. Now, I think interesting to point out that in this community, there's a process underway to take over BIE schools. And this goes back to the point I was making in my opening remarks about the importance of taking control of education in Native communities. And that process is underway there. So I think that's instructive and important. Okay, Vice President Jonathan Nez, Navajo Nation, emphasized that this dialogue is very, very important, very critical for us to get together and to have this conversation. And so I know we're planning on moving forward with this next year. And so just wanted to make that clear that this is something that will be ongoing. Vice President Nez, concerned about what he views as an indoctrination process in higher ed. Again, this speaks to that distance that I was just talking about. How a student comes here from a Native community, they go through this process, and he talked about how when they go back to the Navajo Nation, they often hit a wall. That there is a divide, a difficult divide between them oftentimes and the community. So I think what that means is we need to do more work to really build that bridge from Native communities to the university. So it's not a one-way proposition, but moves both ways. Talked about the need for more self-sufficiency in Native communities. talked about taking back our families, our communities, and our nations. And said, why stop with being the #1 university serving Native Americans? Why not be the #1 university serving indigenous peoples around the world? I like it. Food for thought. Jolene Nelson, Ed Director at the 8 Northern Pueblo Council. They have a higher education commission in New Mexico. And that's something I'm looking forward to learning more about. Each tribe has representation within that commission, an important facet of that. She talked about having to use, the importance of using whatever tools a community has at their disposal. She mentioned one particular challenge where the school district had their first day of classes on their feast day. And so similar to Yavapai Apache, they went to work on that. And now the school has shifted that starting date. I think that's significant. Also mentioned the importance of cultural education for schools. Again, that disconnect between students in Native communities and non-Native teachers. And then Carolyn O'Neill, talked about how we should encourage students to be visionaries. And I really, really like that. To be visionaries, to be forward-thinking, and also a need for public administration. This came up a number of times during our discussion. And as Dr. Begay pointed out, it's something that we're focusing on with our graduate certificate. And so we'll continue to work on that. I think I'll just close by talking about the need that we've recognized, and it really came into focus during this dialogue. The importance of not getting caught here in the ivory tower of NAU and expecting everyone to come to us. You did come to us today, we really appreciate that. We don't want to discourage you. But it's important for us to get out to the communities. And as special advisor to the president, this is a new role for me. I started January 1st. That's a priority. And so I will be visiting with all 22 tribes by summer's end. I visited with 7 so far. I've met some of you on those visits. It's not a one-time visit. We need to keep doing that. And so we were talking about this today in terms of this educational component. We want to find ways to get out there to communities and do the teaching there on site. Some folks are doing this. We have folks here that are getting that work done. We want to do more of it. We have a new nursing program in Fort Defiance. That's one example of where that's happening. There's a lot we can do with online education, great, but we need to get out there. And we're talking about how we might do more of that. So you'll be seeing us fairly soon. I want to thank you all for being here today. Nanhal Wichtiman, in the Spokane language, no word for goodbye, we'll be seeing you again. Members, thanks.